If you want to see how echo chambers work in the internet wrestling community on Twitter, because I'm mostly on Twitter, I'm not on Reddit like how I used to be. But if you want to see how an echo chamber works, look no further to last night's Money in the Bank 2024 and how the only highlights we're talking about is the mess up between Damien Priest versus Seth Rollins and complaining about having a cash in, which happened to be a failure to further progress the most interesting, best storyline that WWE has going aside from the Bloodline 2.0. The only things that we're talking about is the quote unquote botch and how CCV asked Triple H last night during the press conference about that and asked a very quick follow up, is Damien okay to sort of not take the brunt of asking such a question? So this review is going to be covering the whole entire Money in the Bank pay-per-view, which was a really good pay-per-view. Just some mishaps because it happens. It's live. It's a pay-per-view. Things happen. But what's very interesting is that people who are so AEW heavy will try to clown and jump on mistakes that happen in WWE, which I guess is fair game, right? Because other accounts on Twitter do the same thing with AEW. They will point out all the botches. The only difference is that AEW has botch after botch after botch in the same match. When two wrestlers botch a move the first time, they try it again and it ends up becoming botched again. That is why those videos get made, because it's like, all right, if the first and second time, if it doesn't work out, go do something else. But it is very apparent that most AEW wrestlers cannot think on the fly. They cannot improvise. If something is not working, don't try it again, especially if it fails the second time. In WWE, they know how to improvise if they need to improvise, and there's a lot of communication going on in these matches. Sometimes the camera catches the communication, sometimes the camera doesn't. But there are a lot less mistakes when it comes to watching the WWE product. There are mistakes when it's very blatant and you sort of get scared because sometimes these guys go from 0 to 100 rather than slowing down. But the ratio of botches is AEW has more and WWE has less. By no means is this conversation for this podcast episode of reviewing Money in the Bank 2024 is going to do a tit for tat kind of thing. But if you truly want to see how selfish the internet wrestling community can be, especially those that want to get on their Twitter accounts and just say some really stupid shit, and you're like, that's not how it goes. That's not how it is, especially when everyone wanted the ref to count 3. And if the ref did count 3, that means that the stipulation would have went through and Damien would have been kicked out of Judgment Day. Then what do? I bet you they won't tell you a follow-up because they don't know. They are stuck in their bubble, in their little chamber of what works best for them and their fantasy and their narrative for how they want professional wrestling. But if you ask them, all right, cool, let's say the referee did count to 3 during the Damien Priest and Seth Rollins match. If the ref did count to 3, what would have been the next step in the story? I understand that people want Seth Rollins back as champion. I get it. Seth Rollins is a damn good champion. He is a workhorse. That is why I chose Seth Rollins as the first person to talk about the term workhorse and why he's a better workhorse than who I was comparing him to, John Moxley, because everybody was like, Moxley is a workhorse and all this kind of shit. And I'm like, there's more to being a workhorse than just having matches. Because any wrestler in the world of professional wrestling and all the years of professional wrestling can have match after match after match after match. But if you're not remembering those matches, if you're not talking about those matches 3 years later, 4 years later, without looking it up, then that's not a workhorse. If you're having a match just to have a match, go to your local in-state promotion, your local wrestling promotion, and support them every month, because not all wrestling promotions have storylines with their wrestlers. Most of the time, there are no storylines, and most of the time, they're just matches that really don't go anywhere. And I know this for a fact because over here on the East Coast, they do the same. There is not enough consistency when it comes to local wrestling promotions keeping up with storylines with their guys, because most of their guys are freelancers in the world of wrestling, and they are usually on a handshake deal. So you might get the awesome wrestler this month, but that awesome wrestler may not show up or be booked next month for whatever the reason is. So if you just want to experience matches, support your local indie wrestling promotions. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of the Square Circle Podcast with your host, Marie Shadows. And like I said, on this episode, we're talking about Money in the Bank. We're going to be diving into the two main hot topics that have been all over Twitter, because no one else cares about the other matches and how good they were, how decent they were, and what can we expect next going forward. Most of the time, the internet wants to focus on the negatives, which sometimes 9 out of 10, this happens. However, people really thought that it would have been a dunk on WWE to continue to talk about how bad a cash-in happened and how bad Damien Priest did not kick out and how bad was it to waste the spots. Like, I'm going to get into all of it. As always, please tell a friend, share this out, share it with whoever you know. Down in the description below will be all of my links to support me, support the podcast, support the channel, especially supporting the YouTube side of things. I've been a little MIA, missing in action, because I've been having a summer cold and it is so annoying. It is. And just still dealing with some personal real life issues that I will be taking care of soon. But I wanted to make some content and push through and give you guys my thoughts on professional wrestling. So here we are. The only thing that I can ask for, which is totally free, is sharing, commenting, liking, and having an open dialogue with an open mind about this conversation and any other conversation that we have on this channel. Okay, so let's go to the beginning of Money in the Bank 2024. We open up with the men's ladder match, the men's Money in the Bank match. Now, the concept of Money in the Bank is very, very simple. You have a bunch of competitors in a ladder match and they beat the hell out of each other, and one person climbs the biggest ladder they have and take the briefcase down. And in that briefcase, there is a contract for a guarantee shot at any of the championship titles that they want to go for. In some cases, if they want to go for a different championship title on a different brand, I guess if they ask, that can happen. But that's like an exception to the main rule of that you can use that briefcase on anybody. And in the history of Money in the Bank, the cash-ins have been failures, and the cash-ins have been very fruitful for a lot of the competitors. And they can cash in at any time. Just because you don't like the fact that Drew won and or Drew cashed in does not mean that it's the end of the world. It does not mean that it was bad, because let's just look at the competitors that we had in this match. We had Jey Uso, Carmelo Hayes, Andrade, Chad Gable, LA Knight, and Drew McIntyre. Now, let's really analyze what each of these guys are currently doing. Jey Uso, he has the most aura out of everybody in the company at this very moment. And people question Jey Uso and why is he so over, and they don't understand it. Because Jey Uso is just like you. Jey Uso is just like me. He is the common man. You know how Dusty was for the common man, the everyday person, and everybody was like, Dusty is amazing? That is Jey Uso. Jey Uso is your best friend that you had for 20 plus years, that has seen everything with you. Your ups, your downs, your lows, your highs. He's been there. He's been there to give you advice. He's been there to be truthful to you. He is the friend, the ultimate friend that you confide in because you know that he's not going to judge you. You know he's going to hype you up. You know he's going to tell you the truth as well. And you know he's going to probably tell you, hey, if you can't do something, it's okay. We'll find another way to do it. So Jey Uso is just like you and I. He's an ordinary person. He has overcome so many obstacles that have been thrown his way. Being in the bloodline, being out of the bloodline, coming back into the bloodline, and then finally realizing, oh, fuck this. I'm on my own. I'm going to make it on my own. How many of us have a similar story to Jey Uso, where we had all these obstacles put in front of us, and we all prevail one way or another? We all found a solution to improve and do what we wanted to do. That is Jey Uso. That is why he is over. That is why he has what we call now an aura, because he commands the crowd in his very hand, in the palm of his hand. So he's very relatable in that aspect. That is why he is so over with the crowd. Now, in terms of story and what he's doing, he's floating around right now. They don't really have anything for him. So if Jey Uso were to win the Money in the Bank briefcase, I don't think it would have been very opportune time for him to go after the WWE title. That would not make any sense at this very moment. And for him to cash in on Logan Paul for a U.S. title, he really wouldn't need to. Or for him to cash in on Sami Zayn for an IC title, he really wouldn't need to, because Sami would automatically give it to him. And then for Jey to insert himself into the whole World Heavyweight Championship situation is not needed at this very time. So if Jey would have won the briefcase, I don't think it would have helped anything at all, because I'd rather see Jey start feuding with Logan Paul, start feuding with Sami Zayn, and give Jey Uso the opportunity to show what he can do as a champion, whether he is Intercontinental Champion or he is United States Champion. So I'd rather him go through that chaseable journey rather than using a briefcase to cash in on somebody to get the championship title. I do not think that he needs the World Heavyweight Championship title at this very moment, because that storyline is so deep that Jey doesn't really need to be inserted into that. Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes is an excellent addition to the main roster. He was great on NXT, and whatever he does, I really look forward to what Carmelo does. However, again, the same situation. If you give him the Money in the Bank briefcase, where is he going to go with it? What is he going to do? He can tease Sami all he wants. He can tease Logan Paul all he wants. He can even tease Damien Priest all he wants, and even Cody Rhodes all he wants. But if there hasn't been a clear direction for what Carmelo wants to go after, then there wouldn't be a point if we made him, and when I say we, I mean WWE, if WWE made him Money in the Bank and they had him win. Now, Andrade is the WWE Speed Champion, and people online were also clowning him as well. WWE Speed is a brand new micro digital match that is shown on Twitter. It is 5 minutes or less, and everybody is on Twitter. Twitter is very in real time around the world. Anybody can see this, and they get a lot of views because it's worldwide. So everyone who's watching this will get an idea who Andrade is if they never seen him. His fans know who he is, but he could always get newer fans, and those newer fans can convert into WWE fans and watch weekly on cable and Peacock. So by Andrade carrying the WWE Speed Championship title, it makes him somebody. Now, does he need the Money in the Bank briefcase? No, he doesn't. Because he has the same situation as Carmelo Hayes. There is not a clear indication of where his story is going to go, the direction his story is going to go. So, as we've seen in that ladder match, I would say that Andrade and Carmelo Hayes should start feuding, because after all the shit that Carmelo Hayes took on the ladders from Andrade, I would be like, nah, we got to settle this in a match one-on-one. I want to see Carmelo Hayes versus Andrade and have this feud out for a while. Chad Gable. In my opinion, Chad Gable should be Intercontinental Champion. Chad Gable should have defeated Gunther at the time, and that didn't happen. So now Chad is in limbo while also being afraid and fearing for his life because the Wyatt Six decided to attack him, and we all thought he was quote-unquote dead in kayfabe. And I would have really loved it if they would have played it up and did like an alternate parallel universe that we get a different Chad Gable and the other one is a former show and stuff like that. But that might be a little too out there. Anyway, Chad Gable, giving him the briefcase would still put him in the same position. If he gets the briefcase, it would have been interesting to see how the Wyatt Six interacts with Chad Gable. However, Chad Gable could, again, just go through everybody and get a IC championship title match granted to him rather than using the briefcase. So it really wouldn't have made a difference if Chad Gable would have won it. However, again, I will state very strongly that Chad Gable should have already been the Intercontinental Champion rather than Sami Zayn. LA Knight. Another fan favorite. LA Knight really does not need the Money in the Bank briefcase at all, because this guy just goes up to your house and starts making himself at home. And then you're like, all right, man, you got to come into my house and trespass. You get a title shot. That's what LA Knight does. LA Knight forces things to happen his way because he knows how to get under people's skin. So LA Knight winning a Money in the Bank briefcase does not really make any sense, because eventually the match between him and Logan Paul for that US title is going to happen. And then eventually LA Knight will become champion. If not, LA Knight can definitely, again, go through competitors and wrestlers, and Sami Zayn will eventually give him an IC championship title match. So none of these guys have a very deep story that they keep getting fucked over on, except Chad Gable and the Intercontinental Championship title. But I digress. Drew McIntyre was the right person to win the Money in the Bank briefcase because, again, his whole story and point of everything that he's been doing is he gets the opportunity, he ends up failing because of outside forces. So he has hope, and he ends up getting that hope. But then that hope is pulled out from under him like a rug because of CM Punk. He is currently feuding with CM Punk, and everything is connected with what is happening. However, I will say that because Drew McIntyre won the briefcase, that he cashed it in that night, which is great because I did not want Drew to walk around with the Money in the Bank briefcase and just do nothing with it and just tease Damien Priest with it. Sometimes you want to catch your opponent off guard knowing that you have a 90% chance of winning, especially if you turn into a triple threat match like we saw. Damien Priest versus Seth Rollins got turned into a triple threat match, which you can do. I saw people on the internet saying that doesn't make any sense. You can turn it into a triple threat match. And that gave Damien Priest some time to wrestle. That gave Seth Rollins some time to do what he does. And I thought that it was going to be over, that Drew was going to lose before CM Punk coming out and doing what CM Punk does. And I was actually hyped that CM Punk came out and started attacking Drew because I'm so invested into this story between Drew and CM Punk. It is fantastic. It is phenomenal. It is great. I really do enjoy it. So when CM Punk came out and attacked, and basically Damien over here finally got Drew down, he ended up going for the cover, and Damien Priest retains the World Heavyweight Championship title. And then you could definitely see on Damien's face that he knew he fucked up. He knew that it didn't go the way that it planned. And there's a lot of guilt on him. I know that for a fact, because he's a type that, you know, if something fucks up, it's just going to weigh on his conscience. With that being said, that is why Drew was the perfect pick for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, and then to cash in that same night to make it a triple threat, because Drew thought with all of his heart that he was going to regain the championship title. But CM Punk was like, nope, I'm going to mess it up for you, and I'm going to mess it up for you too, Seth Rollins. However, there is a loophole, because the match originally signed was Damien Priest versus Seth Rollins, with the conditions of if Seth Rollins wins, Damien Priest leaves the Judgment Day. And then if Damien Priest retains the World Heavyweight Championship title, Seth Rollins can never challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship title against Damien Priest as long as Damien Priest has that World Heavyweight Championship title. Now that Drew McIntyre decided to make it a triple threat, technically that stipulation is null and void because it became a triple threat. It does not have the same rules or stipulations, I should say. It does not have the same stipulations as the original match. So Drew ended up changing the stipulation for it to be a regular triple threat match, and whoever won, won. Now, we're going back to the talking point of the referee should have just counted 3 and they should have just dealt with it. Again, I asked everyone out there that said that on Twitter. I know I'm not going to get any responses because they want to hear their own narrative. They want to hear their own fantasy. They don't want to have the conversation of, let's talk about it. What kind of story can we go forward if we decided to go with your narrative, with your fantasy of how you see wrestling? And the way that they see wrestling is one-sided, always one-sided. So if the referee did count 3 at that very moment, where you can tell that Damien was knocked out, something was wrong, he didn't kick out fast enough, and if the referee did come down and did a 3 count, Seth Rollins would be the new World Heavyweight Championship title in that scenario. And then if Drew McIntyre comes down and cashes in, then what would be the point? Why would he want to take the belt away from Seth Rollins? Why wouldn't he want to take it away from Damien Priest when Damien Priest was the one that cashed it in on Drew McIntyre after CM Punk decided to trip up Drew McIntyre and beat him up a little bit before Damien Priest came in to take the championship title? See, that wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense for Drew McIntyre to cash in on Seth Rollins if the referee would have counted to 3. And then where do you go from there? If the stipulation remained, Damien Priest would have been out of the Judgment Day. So what do you do with Damien Priest? Are you guys who are so pro, referee should have counted to 3, are you guys gonna just leave him to the wayside and forget about him? Because I don't see a follow-up as to what Damien Priest can do. Damien Priest can definitely become his own breakout star by himself, but it wouldn't really help. It wouldn't grab on. Like, it will be super flat. Like, this is what I don't understand about the internet wrestling community, and it's only a few of the people that get upset, say whatever they want on Twitter, and those voices get amplified. And it's like, there are better people in the community that have a logical way of thinking about why certain things happen and putting the pieces together that should get amplified, rather than all of the negative Nancy's out there that are like, the referee should have counted to 3. This is wrong, blah, blah, blah. Like, it gets frustrating to know that those same people will attack other people, with me included in the other people, will attack other people and tell them that they know nothing about wrestling. Why are you talking? You know nothing about wrestling. And try to clown you in the process while you read their tweets and it's like, it's all one-sided. They have no way of telling you what's going to be next, while the other people can tell you what the story can go further and how the story can be made and how interesting the story can become if they stay the course. Because even though the referee's decision is final, that is what the referee decided to do. The referee decided not to count to 3 because he knew what the story was. They knew what the story was. They knew that Damien was going to retain. They knew that Drew McIntyre was going to cash in. They knew that CM Punk was going to come and attack everybody, and that is how Damien retains. It is unfortunate that something happened during the match to where Damien Priest got knocked out and basically forgot to kick out. It's not his fault. Things happen. Anything goes. It's live. And I want to give a shout out to Triple H on this podcast episode, because that is the kind of commander and leader you need in a wrestling company, to be by your side and to not throw you under the bus and to not glorify everything that he does on his own. You notice how Triple H is always like, we, and it's a team effort. Versus, again, I don't want to do this tit for tat thing with AEW, but like to show the really stark differences of how leaders work. Where in AEW, it's always an I mentality. And I say it all the time on this podcast that you cannot have an I mentality in the world of professional wrestling. It is a we effort until it becomes a you effort in the match. But then again, you have to also be wary of your opponent and take care of them, make sure they don't die, make sure they don't get hurt. It's still a we thing, but it becomes a you thing when you need to shine, when you need to do things along with your partner, but it does become a you thing eventually. The point being that Triple H stood up for Damien Priest when the question was asked, and that was a stupid question. I know it could have been a long day at media. I know that when you get the mic, sometimes the brain doesn't work. I totally get all of that. But CVV is a professional and he should know better. And I don't understand why people don't want to ask Triple H questions about what kind of advice does he give to the talent that he has for the pay-per-view before they go out. Because being in ladder matches is completely different from being in a singles regular match where you don't use weapons. Not every wrestler is going to experience a hardcore match in their lifetime. They might experience it like once, twice, and maybe that may or may not be their thing, but like for a special occasion like Money in the Bank, which is a gimmick match, why are you not asking Triple H about, hey, what kind of pep talks do you give to the competitors to make them feel at ease? Because Triple H is the cerebral assassin, and his favorite weapon is the sledgehammer, and he's been in various matches that included hardcore items and weapons, and he has a hands-on experience with that kind of creation. So why not ask him, hey, what kind of prep talk do you give to the roster? And what kind of pep talk do you give the former NXT stars, now turn main roster stars, to keep their confidence up, to keep their motivations up? How come every question has to try to be like, oh, can you reveal a little bit more? You know, did you call an audible? Why didn't you call an audible, Triple H? Or questions about the Vince McMahon court case that is still going on, knowing that Triple H cannot answer. There are smarter questions that can go a long way when you are media, rather than trying to get that pat on the back because you want to have a gotcha. If you haven't noticed, wrestling media isn't like the White House media or journalistic media where you have to have proven degrees and credentials and amazing bylines in order to get down to the deep and hard-hitting questions. I still think that wrestling media can become legit if we all respected each other, we all collaborated in one way, shape, or another, and if we did not decide to be cutthroat and decide to be number one and trying to take all the opportunities and put out half-ass shit, you know, I think that that is how we could become legitimate and also not have really stupid arguments on Twitter about wrestling when you don't know much about wrestling or what goes on in the back, or the armchair bookers that want a certain type of fantasy, want a certain type of narrative, and just have all this bickering. There's a reason why WWE does not listen to that crowd, and you can see the difference. WWE doesn't listen to that crowd, AEW listens to that crowd, and that's why AEW is where they are, because they listen. And sometimes you should listen, but not all the time, because not everyone's idea is golden. Not everyone's idea is great if you take it from the paper to the canvas and make it come to life. But back to the whole wrestling media thing, I am just glad that we have Triple H as our commander and our leader to be by the side of the wrestlers, because he is 100% right where he said that people will focus on the negative, the one negative that happened in the match, rather than how good the match was, how good the setup was. We knew that CM Punk was going to show up in Toronto. We knew that because Drew McIntyre is there, CM Punk is going to be somewhere, but we didn't know how. We did not know the destination of how that would have unfolded. And that is why WWE is doing record numbers. And it's the hottest thing that we have going today, because we know what is going to take place, but we don't know how. We don't know how the destination is going to go. It's like if you have a road trip, yes, you have the one route that you need to go and you know for sure where you need to go. But it's the cool things where you stop along the way that make the road trip the best road trip you ever had. Because it is the stops, it is the restaurants, it's, you know, you taking the time to breathe everything in, soak everything in, rather than just going straight to the finish line. And again, not to make this a WWE versus AEW thing, but that's AEW. AEW wants to get to the finish line in their stories rather than taking the fantastic road trip with you, where you stop along the way and you get amazed. And at the end of the trip, you're like, oh, I didn't expect any of that. That is what WWE is currently doing right now with the, I didn't expect it to go this way. And when I say it, I mean the storyline. With that being said, I want to quickly talk about the other things that happened in Money in the Bank. We had a very, very huge announcement from John Cena. John Cena announces his retirement, that 2025 is going to be his last year as an in-ring competitor. Anything else, we are not sure what's going to happen. And he decided to kick off the press conference, and people were asking him questions, and he did his best to answer. And John Cena is very special. He is truly one of a kind to step into this business and to do it as long as he has done it, even though he went to Hollywood and made some movies and dipped his toe into that. But I will say that I grew up with John Cena. He is my childhood wrestler, and I've been through everything with him for what I've seen on TV. And there was a point where, me being a fan, I did not like the whole rapping game, and I did not like what came after that. And I really did feel at that time that he was being shoved down everyone's throats, because he was the guy that grabbed the brass ring and did what he needed to do. And then later on, I started to come around and I really enjoyed what he was doing. but he got put into the category of just being there. John Cena has a massive career, and it is a damn good career with ups and downs, highs and lows. And I can't wait to see what happens on this farewell tour, because it is going to be full of tears. It's going to be full of love, happiness, frustration, laughing, all the emotions you could think of. And when John Cena announced that this would be his last run, yeah, I teared up, because Cena means so much to the wrestling business and everything that he has contributed to the wrestling business, even if it has just been WWE. And through the contributions of John Cena and everyone before him and with him at the time, helped create this new era of WWE that we are seeing. The women's match, the women's Money in the Bank ladder match, was fantastic. Those ladies deserve their flowers, even though I was really worried about some of the things that I saw, but they deserve their flowers. Chelsea Green deserves her flowers. Io Sky deserves her flowers. Lyra also, Naomi, Tiffany, and Zoe. All of them were fantastic. I really did think that Chelsea was going to win it at one point, but then Tiffy came and it's Tiffy time, and this is going to be very interesting. I would love to see Tiffany Stratton versus Trish Stratus. That would be a very nice one-on-one. The Intercontinental Championship title, I wish we would have had a new champion, because I just can't take Sami Zayn as Intercontinental Champion for very much longer, because I just can't. Sami Zayn needs to change, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what he needs to change, because if he goes heel, what is he going to do? As you know, when you are a heel character, you grow out the beard, you grow out your hair, but we have been seeing this scruffy wrestler that is Sami Zayn for the longest. He didn't even decide to maybe trim down his beard or shave his beard off and cut his hair very low after leaving the bloodline to have a new chapter of Sami Zayn or something like that. But as a heel, you're supposed to grow that out, because it's supposed to make you just feel a lot more intimidating. But Sami has these underdog promos, and it's like, I can't believe you anymore. Like, stop with the underdog promos, stop with the self-pity kind of thing, and do something different. Change it up. Maybe take a break, take a vacation, so that way it won't be Sami Zayn fatigue. It's the same way of Becky Lynch. We had Becky Lynch fatigue. Well, I had Becky Lynch fatigue, and nobody challenged me on that, but women will challenge me on the topic of, oh, but why can men do this, but women can't do that, and that double-edged sword playing victim kind of shit. But not challenge me on how we never really got Becky Lynch fatigue. Just saying. The same way that I think now we are in the zone of Sami Zayn fatigue, I think that Sami needs to drop the belt, take some time off, and just reinvent himself into something different, because we've been seeing the same Sami Zayn for years now, and just need something a little bit different. The difference between him and Kevin Owens for me is that Kevin can also change as well, because eventually the fight Owens fight is going to get, tiring, and it's going to come to a point where it's like, you need a break too. But with Kevin, he gets a tiny break and then gets inserted into other stories. And I'm just like, all right, he's the muscle guy. He's the guy that's going to be there to support his other friends and coworkers. So, he's just there. Sami right now is in limbo. Sami should not be Intercontinental Champion at this point. Chad Gable should be Intercontinental Champion, and that's why people are not really accepting Sami at this very moment. Sami versus Braun Breaker, I really wanted Braun to get the championship title, even though that would be super early for him. And I have this thing about, not every person should get a championship title right away, but I just want Sami to drop the title. So that's gonna be my only thing. So yeah, I wanted Braun Breaker to be champion. The match was fine. It was okay. It was decent. But I really do think that Braun should have went over and became the new Intercontinental Champion. Now, the main event, which was the Bloodline versus Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton, that was a fun match. A fun match. And thankfully, there was only one referee bump throughout this whole entire pay-per-view. And again, I will say it again. It was a very, very fun match. Now, the other negative that people like to talk about is they like to clown Tanga Loa, and I will not accept any kind of Gorillas of Destiny slander. Tanga Loa, I have no idea what's up with him, but even though there are just timing just off, this time around he hit his head at the commentator's desk. Like, that's cause for like, oh shit, he probably forgot the timing. However, let's really talk about what happened. So Tanga Loa was expected to do a low blow to Kevin Owens. However, yeah, the timing was off because Kevin already had Tama in the position for the package power driver. Now, I need all the internet wrestling community people that like to clown on wrestlers to listen up and send them this podcast episode so they can listen up and how things work. When you are in the position of the package power driver, your head is in between the legs of the person that's going to be doing this move on you. So if Loa came in to really and truly do the low blow, he would have hit Tama's face. And that would have really resulted in even more of a fuck up. And that's not what we wanted. Yeah, it looked mad weird because as soon as Loa came in, Kevin moved and Loa hit him in the butt, which, you know, we could see it in the footage. And then once Kevin realized, oh shit, this is the spot, he let go of Tama so that way Loa can adjust the angle of the low blow and get the low blow. Now, I would have did something a little bit different. If you know that Kevin is going to set up Tama for the package power driver instead of trying to go for a low blow, because at this point you really don't need the low blow. The referee is down. He got hit twice, but you really don't need the low blow at this point. I would have went for a forearm to the back of the head, back of the neck, back of the shoulder blades, just so that way Kevin does not get to do the package power driver on Tama, and we wouldn't have the internet trying to make something small into a huge thing because they want to get their 15 minutes of fame in on Twitter and have everybody laugh and become bullies just because Loa tends to do certain things, and we're like, I don't think that's the best thing for you to do. Like, for example, I don't understand why Loa wanted to do the 619 one day in New Japan Pro Wrestling, where I'm like, bro, you have a lot of muscle. That's not going to work. And then he tried it again, and luckily David Finlay was there to sort of be like, let's sort of fix this. But Loa has a lot of muscle, and I give him A for effort to try something new, but because Loa has that extra muscle on him, it's not really going to work right. However, in this situation at Money in the Bank, it was just a timing issue, and Loa hit the back of his head on the commentator's desk. So trying to remember what you got to do and everything like that, like, it was just off. There's no need to sort of bring up stuff from the past. There's no need to put clown emojis. There's no need to bully somebody just because they had a small little timing off. But still managed to do what needed to be done in that spot. Overall, Jacob Fatu stole the match, and Jacob Fatu is going to be a huge problem for all the other wrestlers. He's going to be a problem for Randy Orton. He's going to be a problem for Kevin Owens. That stare down between Kevin Owens and Jacob Fatu was beautiful. That is what we call cinema, guys. Like, you cannot wait until those two behemoths are let loose one-on-one in a ring, because it's going to be fantastic. And Cody Rhodes versus Jacob Fatu sometime in the future, Jacob Fatu, like I said, is going to be a problem for all of the roster. Tomlin's also going to be a problem for the roster as well. This guy has a proven track record of being one of the best and can definitely put out some really good stories with everybody. He is so good in the ring. And then once Loa is able to have matches, both him and Tama, they're going to be a damn good tag team for WWE. And they're going to end up dominating the tag team division. Other than that, tonight at 7 p.m. on Peacock, we have NXT Heatwave. So I hope everyone enjoys NXT Heatwave. And that is going to be my review for WWE Money in the Bank 2024 that was live in Toronto. It was a damn good pay-per-view. It's just the internet are always going to be negative. It is. It's always going to be negative, and that negativity is going to grow. Now, positivity should be pushed. However, if it's way too positive, you end up having toxic positivity, and we need a balance. So none of the things that are said on the internet should be one or the other. There should be a balance between the two, and that's what I think should be no matter what. There should be a balance. There should be constructive criticism. There should be moments where you're able to tell me, how do we progress with this story if you wanted the ref to count 3? How do we progress with this? There should be open mind for conversation and dialogue when it comes to certain situations and what kind of questions are said in the media press room. And just think about the way that wrestling is. Wrestling is live theater. Even though it is a script and people follow a script and people protect each other in the match, there is a script that needs to be followed. And sometimes they can stray away from it. Sometimes they can't. And if they stray away from it, maybe they have another backup plan that makes sense. Because in the event that the referee did count to 3, then a certain section of the internet and wrestling fans will be happy, you know. And this isn't the first time that a referee didn't really count 3, because there were other times where we all knew that was 3, but to continue the match and to have the right person win, you know, we didn't make a big deal about it then, so to speak. But because it's Damien Priest versus Seth Rollins, and some people getting on the Damien Priest hate train for some odd reason, it's mad weird of how we look at wrestling and how the internet dictates what we should like, what we should believe, and who's right, who's wrong, and pointing fingers and being divisive rather than celebrating what Triple H said, that it was a damn good match. But no, people want to focus on the one thing that can take anybody out of the match. Sometimes I'm even like that when I'm reviewing certain matches. There's something that takes me out of it, and I'm like, fuck, it took me out of it. Why did you guys do that? But I'm always able to probably come back around and be like, it was good, it just took me out. Or I watch it again and I'm like, oh, okay. But for this, the only reason why I'm reiterating it is because it's a frustration. I've never seen people that want to be frustrated and angry so bad to try to get brownie points and pats on the back and try to champion the fact that we had a couple of mishaps when this is live. But you can't say anything about the supposed competition because that is bad. But they think they get the one up because WWE had some mistakes. Shit happens in wrestling. Go try wrestling yourself. Go to a school and see if you can do what these guys do. I don't really like using that as like a flex or like a gotcha, but seriously, go try doing what they do, especially with the segment and combination that Seth Rollins did to Damien Priest. It knocked them out. And I do think that Seth Rollins bringing back the buckle bomb to do the buckle bomb to Damien Priest, who's a 6 foot tall guy and he weighs so much pounds, I don't think that was smart. And that could have played into Damien Priest not kicking out. Did anybody ever think of that? No, because people are like, oh, the referee should have counted to 3. They get so tunnel vision with that. and they don't see the bigger picture of the whole entire match. That was Triple H's point. People get that tunnel vision and don't see the bigger picture of the match. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this episode of WWE Money in the Bank 2024 review by yours truly, Marie Shadows. Again, make sure to look at all of my links down in the description below so that way you can support me everywhere in the channel, and tell a friend, share it out, leave your comments, leave your thoughts. I will read and respond to everybody, and we will have an awesome conversation down below in the comments. Thank you for listening to this review, and I'll see you guys on the next one.